Hey, and welcome to CBM Calling on Saturday, weekend 3 for many of us, not meeting in person for worship, weekend 2 at least. This weekend, we're meeting with Dennis Shierman, Western Rep for CBM based in Calgary, and Scott Simpson, who actually used to be the Western Rep and now is Senior Pastor at Bonavista Baptist, also in Calgary. So welcome, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties with the live stream. We'll hopefully get this recorded video posted up soon.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Scott, tell us again, if people weren't watching before, how's your family doing in the midst of all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're all at home. My wife is working from home right now, and so she inhabits one room. The girls have taken over the kitchen, so they've been making all kinds of things, which is incredibly dangerous. So it'll be interesting to see when this is all over just how I tip the scales. But otherwise, as a family, we're doing well.
Yeah. A friend of mine, I said before that a friend of mine said that the 19 is for the 19 pounds we all gain while we're locked up at home.
Yeah, if we're lucky. Yeah.
It might be more.
It might be more.
How are you doing, Dennis, with life and ministry?
Under the circumstances as well.
Yeah, ministry, I'm sure, looks very different for you. Your job is often out connecting with people, speaking in churches, meeting with pastors and leaders. How are you still connecting people to the work that we're part of around the world?
Sure, that's the biggest difference, as you say, in terms of not being able to be face-to-face. But in many ways, we are still face-to-face through multimedia, through our Skype and our Zoom and so on. And we're thankful for that. And we're connecting. And it is appreciated by our churches and particularly our leadership there and pastors and so on. And because it encourages them, they see that ministry carries on and someone just simply to talk to as well. Yeah. Particularly for those pastors, being able to share and give ideas and so on. So yeah, while it's different, and at times can be a bit of a challenge, as we've picked up this morning with the system, we make it happen, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. And Scott, how about you? How's Bonavista initially responded in the midst of this new reality?
Yeah, I think like other churches, we didn't have a guidebook for this, right? So, and we didn't have a chance to get our heads together as pastors in the city or people nationwide as church leaders. So it's interesting to me to see how intuitively the churches have responded to this, and we've come up with fairly similar patterns. We want to make sure that we stay connected. We want to make sure that we keep caring for people in the congregation, especially the most vulnerable, and we want to be postured to serve the community in whatever way that looks. So it's interesting to see how the mission of the church continues. And I think people in this congregation for sure have really responded well to that.
Yeah. What does a typical online or Sunday worship experience look like for your people?
Well, we decided to use YouTube as our platform of choice. We decided not to do live streaming because of possible technical difficulties, or
they never happened.
They never happened. So Pastor Samuel, our associate pastor, and I mentioned this just before, he's probably the smartest person in the world. I said next to Jesus and others, but Samuel has done an amazing job of pre-recording video segments for the worship service, and then doing some editing, putting it together. And then we use YouTube Premiere. So we released it at 10 a.m. on Sunday. So people gather around, they've got a countdown timer. And I was amazed at the number of people that actually gathered for that time slot. Because right after the service was over, I had a flood of text messages and emails and all that kind of stuff. So we decided to establish just a base first, and then we can get some creative elements to add on to it. So that seemed to be within our control, and people have responded well. Our youth ministry, they're already very familiar with connecting online, and so they've used Instagram Live and Zoom. Last night they had a Zoom meeting with like over 30 kids or something, and so it's been interesting to see how people have adapted but stayed connected. And it's been really good.
One of the other things that is interesting that I'm hearing from some of the churches that don't have the technology, but are able to connect, are relying on churches like yours and saying, hey, we can join you as well. And that's neat. That helps connect us as Baptists as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how much we're discovering that being the church is not just meeting in person for an event on a weekend. But even as you mentioned, Scott, caring for the vulnerable, how have you identified that? What system do you have in place to care for people? How are you handling that?
Yeah, I think like other churches have done, we formed a team, a volunteer team. Some of the team members come from our pastoral visitation committee and some from our prayer team. And they volunteered to come together. We identified about 40 people in the congregation who would be vulnerable because of being in a care home or having underlying health conditions, or maybe economic vulnerability, or because they're frontline healthcare workers, or maybe there's some anxiety or depression that's ongoing. So we took that list and divided it up amongst the care response team so that we make sure we're checking in with those people. And we've had opportunity to deliver groceries or to pray with them over the phone, those kind of things. And so, again, we've established that as a base, and then we hope to grow that as well. And for me, that's meant connecting with members in the community. We've had a lot of people calling saying, I'm out of money, I've lost my job, how can you help? So I've been the gift card delivery guy, and have gone out and delivered grocery cards to a number of people in the community, just as an extension of our witness. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great. One of the questions we get a lot at CBM, or have gotten a lot the last little bit, is your ministry continuing? Is your programming ongoing? Are your field staff staying in the field? And the answer to all of that is yes, it is. It might look a little different based on restrictions and things like that, but ministry very much continues. And I'm sure that's true at the local church level as well, that while you're juggling all these things, trying to figure out how to get YouTube Premiere to work, or have the youth join on Instagram Live, the regular pastoral care and ministry things are still ongoing. How have you balanced that, and have you experienced that?
Yeah, like we're saying, life goes on, and the regular stuff that people have to deal with, crisis points and life transitions, all of that continues to happen. So there's this extra layer of complexity because of the coronavirus and restrictions on movement and stuff. I mean, tragically, we had a family that's connected to a member in our congregation who lost their 2-year-old son just last week. And we just can't organize the normal funeral or those kind of things for them. But we did find ways to care for them and meet their practical needs and try and support them the best we could. And people who are moving, people who are doing different things, we're still trying to find ways to support regular life in the midst of this kind of craziness that we're facing. Yeah.
So continuing to serve, continuing to be the church in the midst of just a different.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I've been so amazed to see the church, and Bonavista Church is a fantastic congregation, and they've really stepped up to the challenge. They've adapted well, and they've maintained connection. Decision-making processes are still in place, and outreach to the community is still happening. In fact, the number of people that watched our YouTube service far surpassed the number of people that we'd normally have on Sunday morning. So it was great. I had comments from people in Scotland and in India and in some of the places where we have some friends as well. So that's been an interesting thing to watch.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. First one for you, Scott, and the second one's for both of you. The first question is this. I find that sometimes in crisis, people can think of themselves first. And we can almost look inward at our own needs. And to some extent, I think that's understandable. But how have you helped your people? It sounds like you've really helped them focus on the other. How have you done that?
Well, I think there's a natural caring kind of motivation within this community already. So I think they naturally want to care for each other. The challenge right now is that part of the way we care for one another is by staying home.
Yeah.
And so I know our natural inclination is to care by getting close. But right now, part of our care is by taking care of ourselves, making sure we're not putting ourselves in harm's way or that we're unnecessarily, going out. So it's a selfless act to have to, to say, I'm going to stay home so that I'm not endangering someone else. Do you know what I mean? So that's part of the challenge I think we're facing too. People want to help so much, but our natural mechanism for helping has been removed. And so maybe the best way we can help is by staying home. Yeah.
Good point. All right, last question for both of you. In the midst of this, where do you see hope? Where have you seen God at work? Yeah.
Wow. It's a great question. And I've seen it in talking with leadership, pastors, donors, those that are engaged in that desire to serve. And my hope is that they carry on. They want to. There's a deep desire. They're not just thinking of themselves and saying, how do I protect myself? Well, that's important. They're saying, hey, and you've heard some of the stories, and I hear them, the stories of reaching out, the sacrifice is there, and saying, and being encouraged. I get the question of, well, your staff are still, and missionaries are still in the field, and they're ministering to the needs of the poor and the needy and living out word and deed. And if they can do that, so can we. And that gives me hope for the church here in Canada particularly.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, there's a lot of hope that's still there. I think I see hope as people pick up the phone and call one another and check in and care. The congregation has been very generous, continuing to support the mission of the church. I'm kind of excited in some ways to see what new things we're going to learn throughout this too. I mean, Bonavista has been wanting to increase our social media presence and increase our presence in the community. And this is a very hopeful time to offer the hope of Christ during this. So, and see people respond really well to that. So there's lots of points of hope all the way along. And so I don't feel discouraged. And I'm actually kind of excited to see what God's going to do.
Oh, that's great. I think we'll sort of wrap things up there. Scott, our team, the church engagement team, meets every day right now. We're checking in every day in the afternoon, and one of the things we're doing is praying for churches across Canada. And that this would be a time when the church does it's at its best in the midst of caring for people in all sorts of ways. So thanks for taking time with us today. So thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, thanks.
We'll talk soon.